Cause, a principle, aim, or movement that because of a deep commitment, one is prepared to defend or advocate. Karibu. Karibu is a Kiswahili word that means welcome. Welcome, you found yourself in a peaceful place, a place where you can grow and develop, and we hope grow and develop to your fullest potential. This is a podcast that we hope will expand your mind and raise your consciousness. Welcome to The Cause, conversations on music, history, and democracy. Feminism is not simply a struggle to end male chauvinism or a movement to ensure that women will have equal rights with men. It is a commitment to eradicating the ideology of domination that permeates Western culture on various levels: gender, race, and class, to name a few. And a commitment to reorganizing U.S. society so that the self-development of people can take precedence over imperialism, economic expansion, and material desires. Bell Hooks, from her book, Ain't I a Woman? Black Women and Feminism. Peace and power, freedom and family. Welcome to The Cause, conversations on music, history, and democracy. I'm your host, Dr. Reiland Rabaka, coming to you from the Center for African and African American Studies at the University of Colorado, Boulder. Today's episode is devoted to a great cause, one that reshaped law and language, home and heart, labor and love. Today, we turn our attention to the women's liberation movement. What is women's liberation? It is more than a slogan. It is more than a season. It is more than a symbolic seat at a table built by patriarchy. Women's liberation is the radical reimagining of the world itself. It is the audacious assertion that women are not property, not afterthought, not footnotes to male ambition, but full human beings, endowed with intellect, imagination, agency, and authority. To speak of the women's liberation movement is to speak of fire. Fire in the streets, fire in consciousness, fire in kitchens and classrooms and courtrooms. It is to speak of a generation of women who declared that the personal is political, who refused to confine freedom to the ballot box while their bodies remained battlegrounds and their labor remained invisible. We gather today not simply to recount events, but to reclaim inheritance. Because this history is not past. It pulses in our paychecks and our politics. It reverberates in our art and our activism. It lives in every demand for dignity. Let us begin by asking, what is the women's liberation movement and why? Why did it matter so much, so deeply, so profoundly? The women's liberation movement emerged in the late 1960s as a radical wing of what scholars call second wave feminism. But to understand its urgency, we must understand its difference. Earlier women's rights movements, particularly the 19th century and early 20th century suffrage movements, centered on securing the right to vote. Figures like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton demanded political citizenship. The vote was essential. It was monumental, but it was not sufficient. The women's liberation movement insisted that oppression did not end at the ballot. It lived in the workplace, where women earned less for the same labor. It lived in the home, where domestic work was expected but unpaid. It lived in the bedroom, where sexuality was relegated and reproductive rights restricted. It lived in culture, where women were objectified and infantilized. The women's liberation movement asked, what does freedom mean if you can vote but cannot control your own body? What does equality mean if you can enter the workforce but cannot rise in it? What does citizenship mean if violence in the home remains a private secret rather than a public crisis? Key figures of this era include Betty Friedan, whose book, The Feminine Mystique, named The Problem That Has No Name. The dissatisfaction of suburban housewives confined to domesticity. There was Gloria Steinem, who used journalism as a weapon against sexism. There was Shulamith Firestone, who critiqued the biological and technological underpinnings of patriarchy. And then there was Kate Millett, whose Sexual Politics, her book, Sexual Politics, exposed the ways literature and culture reproduce male dominance. Second wave feminism, of which the women's liberation movement was a dynamic expression, extended the feminist struggle beyond suffrage to issues such as reproductive rights, workplace discrimination, sexual harassment, marital rape, and gendered violence. It birthed consciousness-raising groups, circles of women who gathered in living rooms and community centers to testify, to analyze, to connect the intimate to the institutional. Second wave feminism differed from previous forms in its insistence that patriarchy is systemic. It is not simply about unjust laws, but about social structures. Not simply about individual prejudice, but about institutional power. And yet, let's be honest. Let us be historically accountable. Mainstream second wave feminism was often dominated by white, middle class, college educated women. Their grievances were real. I'm going to repeat that. Their grievances were real, but their analysis did not always account for race, class, colonialism, or heterosexism. Many non-white women felt excluded. They felt that the movement spoke of women as though all women experience oppression in the same way. But a black woman working as a domestic laborer did not experience, quote, the problem that has no name, unquote, in the same way as a suburban housemaker, a Latina farm worker, an indigenous woman resisting forced sterilization, an Asian American garment worker. Their struggles were layered, gendered, racialized, and classed. Therefore, from within and alongside the women's liberation movement, other liberatory currents arose. If the women's liberation movement sought to expand the meaning of womanhood, the Black women's liberation movement sought to expand the meaning of liberation itself. Black women had long been freedom fighters within the abolitionist movement, within Reconstruction, within the Black Women's Club movement of the 19th century, late 19th century and early 20th century. Think of Ida B. Wells, anti-lynching crusader. Think of Dr. Anna Julia Cooper, who declared that when Black women rise, the whole race rises with them. But the 1960s and 1970s marked a new articulation, what we now call Black feminism. Black women in civil rights and Black power organizations often found themselves confronting sexism within movements that fought against racism and for racial justice. They were told to wait, to be patient, to subordinate gender justice to racial justice. But as Black women insisted, we cannot divide ourselves. The Black women's liberation movement emerged as a response to both racism within white feminism and sexism within Black nationalism. Organizations like the Combahee River Collective, named after Harriet Tubman's Civil War raid, articulated a radical vision. In their 1977 statement, they asserted that the liberation of Black women would necessitate the destruction of all systems of oppression, because Black women stand at the crossroads of race, gender, class, and sexuality. Key figures in the Black women's liberation movement beyond the Combahee River Collective include Bell Hooks, who critiqued white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, her famous phrase, white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, and she critiqued with piercing clarity. Audre Lorde, who reminded us that the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. Angela Davis, whose work linked prisons, capitalism, racism, and patriarchy. Barbara Smith, who helped found the Combahee River Collective and insisted on an intersectional approach before the word became common currency. Shout out to Kimberly Crenshaw for coining the term intersectionality and really sort of contributing that in 1989. Black feminism of the 1960s and 1970s differed from earlier Black women's activism in its explicit naming of patriarchy as a system intertwined with white supremacy and capitalism. It was unapologetically radical. It was queer affirming. It was working class women centered. It was internationalist. And it was creative. Listen to the music of the era. Let's think about Aretha Franklin singing Respect, not merely as romantic plea, but as a political proclamation. Think about Nina Simone singing For Women. You want to hear some music? Pull up Nina Simone singing For Women, which maps the scars of racialized womanhood, of Black womanhood.
My skin is black, and my arms are long. My hair is like wool, back is strong. Strong enough to take all the pain that's been inflicted again and again and again and again. What do they call me?
Think about Roberta Flack, offering tenderness in a violent world. These were not just songs. They were soundtracks to struggle. They were sermons set to soul music. Black feminism insisted that we cannot talk about women's liberation without talking about sterilization abuse, without talking about welfare rights, without talking about the unpaid labor of Black domestic workers, without talking about state violence. It insisted that feminism must be anti-racist, or it is not feminism at all. The women's liberation movement was not only political, it was poetic. It was not only legislative, it was lyrical. In literature, writers like Toni Morrison excavated the interior lives of Black women, insisting that memory is a form of resistance. Alice Walker named womanism as a corrective to white-centered feminism. June Jordan fused love and liberation in language that burned and blessed. In visual art, in theater, in grassroots newspapers, women created counter-archives. They documented what dominant history erased. In other words, they documented what patriarchal history erased. And the refrain echoed, the personal is political. The kitchen is political. The classroom is political. The clinic is political because the body is political. The body is historical. The body is cultural, and the body remembers. How did the women's liberation movement change women's lives? That's the key question at this point. In the 1980s, we saw the institutionalization of women's studies programs across universities throughout this country. Title IX reshaped educational access. Reproductive rights were defended, though contested. Shelters for survivors of domestic violence expanded. In the 1990s, third wave feminism emerged, embracing intersectionality, a term popularized by legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw to describe how systems of oppression interlock. From 2000 to 2010, digital feminism amplified voices previously marginalized. Blogs, online campaigns, digital activism, grassroots organizing flourished. In the 2010s, movements like the Me Too movement exposed the ubiquity of sexual harassment. The Women's March mobilized millions globally. The Black Lives Matter movement, co-founded by Black women, demonstrated that contemporary social justice movements are deeply embedded to Black feminist frameworks. Today, debates over reproductive justice, trans rights, equal pay, and care labor continue. The terrain has shifted, but the struggle persists. The legacy of the women's liberation movement is complex. It achieved monumental gains. It left lots of unfinished business. It taught us that movements must evolve or they calcify.
Are you ready to dive deep into the rich histories, cultures, and arts of Africa and the African diaspora? At the Center for African and African American Studies, affectionately known as The Cause, we're leading the way in research, arts, and student engagement at the University of Colorado, Boulder. The Cause is more than just a research center. It's a space where students, faculty, artists, allies, and activists come together to explore African and African American experiences, from historical legacies to modern cultural expressions. And at the heart of it all, our students, playing a central role in everything we do. They're the future of this important cultural legacy, working side by side with faculty on groundbreaking projects and events that impact not just the campus, but the community and wider world. Research projects and events that impact not just our beloved CU campus, but the community and world at large.
Our mission? To foster academic excellence, social responsibility, and artistic expression, with programs that inspire leadership and advocacy for social justice. Whether you're interested in visual arts, music, or deepening your understanding of African American culture, The Cause is the place for you.
But we can't do it alone. The Cause relies on the generous support of our community to continue making a difference. By giving to the Center for African and African American Studies, you help us expand research, create opportunities for artists, support our students, and drive meaningful social change. And right now, your gift will go even further. All donations will be matched by CU Boulder Chancellor Justin Swartz for up to $1 million or until May 30th, 2026. To make your impact today, visit colorado.edu/center/cause and click on Support the Cause. Every contribution, large or small, brings us closer to a future of unity, knowledge, and transformation.
So, if you're looking for a community where history, culture, and creativity converge, visit the Center for African and African American Studies at CU Boulder. Come join The Cause and be a part of a movement for unity, knowledge, and social change.
Learn more and give today at colorado.edu/center/cause. We can't wait to welcome you to The Cause.
Why must we carry these lessons forward? That's a key question at this point. Because patriarchy adapts. Because backlash is real. Because rights, once won, can be rescinded. Because freedom is fragile unless fortified by collective commitment. The women's liberation movement teaches us that liberation must be intersectional. It must be global. It must be grounded in the lived experiences of those most marginalized. It teaches us that consciousness precedes change, that testimony births theory, that solidarity strengthens struggle. It reminds us that democracy is not merely electoral, it is relational. It is how we treat each other in homes and hallways, in policy and in practice. In many ways, this episode is a companion, a sequel to the episode that we did earlier on the women's suffrage movement. And so here is a tribute to so many people who have been so incredibly influential on my life, my work, my art, my activism. And I think it's very important to roll call, to shout them out, before I get into this particular piece. It's no secret. I love poetry. which is one of the reasons I'm really into rap music. I think at its best, not at its worst, but at its best. So if we move beyond radio rap, there is a lot to love and like about rap music. And so some people have it all twisted. They think that radio rap is the only kind of rap. And, you know, if they really go and check out some of my work, I've written a trilogy called the Hip Hop Movement Trilogy. And in that trilogy, I have identified more than 100 forms of rap music. And part of my central argument is that most people only really know about two forms of rap music. That's going to be radio rap and gangster rap. So the fact that there's feminist rap and queer rap and trans rap and eco rap, you know, there's all different kinds of rap music out there. But, you know, some people are lazy when it comes to Black popular music. And what I want to do is sort of channel some of the Black feminist poets who have been so incredibly influential on me and my work. And I just want to sort of shout out first and foremost, you know, my teacher at Temple University, Sonia Sanchez, you know, Nikki Giovanni, Jane Cortez, one of my absolute favorite, talk about jazz poetry, Jane Cortez, June Jordan, obviously, Audre Lorde, Lucille Clifton, Mari Evans, my beloved Gwendolyn Brooks. I said it, Gwendolyn Brooks. And last but certainly not least, Carolyn M. Rogers. So I'm going to do my very best. Obviously, you know, these are iconic, legendary poets who, wow. I mean, I don't have words to describe what they mean to me, how they have influenced my artistry. And so I'm going to do my best to honor and acknowledge them in this particular piece where I want to capture some of the vibes, some of the feel, some of the growl and groove of the women's liberation movement, but of the Black women's liberation movement in particular. So this piece, this piece is called When We Say Liberation, We Mean. Come on now. Look at that title. Can you see the June Jordan influence? Can you see the Audre Lorde influence, the Sonia Sanchez, Nikki Giovanni, Maya Angelou influence? Come on now. When we say, title my piece, when we say liberation, we mean. We mean the cracked kitchen floor, remembering the weight of her bare feet. We mean the hand that stirred and stirred and stirred and finally uncurled into a fist. We mean a woman standing at the edge of her own name, refusing to answer to anything smaller. Listen, history is not a hallway of portraits. It is a chorus of throats clearing themselves. It is a mother leaning over a crib, whispering revolution in lullaby tempo. It is a sister counting rent money and counting the ways she has been told to wait. Wait for the brothers. Wait for the ballot. Wait for the bruises to fade. Wait for God to intervene. But her body has never been patient. Her body is a library of interrupted sentences, hips speaking in italics, breasts annotated by hungry mouths, womb footnoted by law. And she says, no more footnotes. I will be the text in the factory, in the classroom, in the cotton field memory, in the fluorescent office. She gathers herself like weather. A storm does not apologize for its volume. It names the heat. It names the pressure. It names the system that swells and swallows. And she names the small violences, the unpaid labor, the hands that roam without consent, the joke that curdles in a boardroom, the silence that thickens at the dinner table. She names them until naming becomes thunder and thunder becomes movement. There are women who braided each other's courage in living rooms heavy with cigarette smoke. Women who folded theory into grocery lists. Women who stitched shelter from statistics. They said the personal is not a whisper, it is a map. They said our backs are not bridges for someone else's crossing. They said, if you cage our voices, we will teach the bars to sing. And we have. We have sung in minor keys, in blue notes bent toward survival. We have sung in gospel heat, hands clapping against the lie that heaven is only elsewhere. We have sung in jazz time, where improvisation is another word for breath. We have sung and rhymed in the cadence of rap music, spitting truth sharp enough to shave the edges off empire. And still, a girl somewhere is shrinking her brilliance to fit inside a hallway that was never built for her stride. So we write her a new architecture. We tell her, your anger is not ugly, it is a compass. Your tenderness is not weakness, it is water carving stone. Your pleasure is not a crime, it is a constellation. Look, the march is not over. It is only changed shoes. It walks in sneakers, in heels, in work boots, in bare feet toughened by pavement. It walks in the quiet decision to leave, in the loud decision to stay and fight. It walks in the classroom where a professor names the wound and calls it history and calls the students to heal it. When we say liberation, we mean no one left outside the door. No woman asked to split herself into acceptable halves. We mean a table wide enough for every shade of us. We mean a future that does not require our disappearance. We mean breathing without permission. And if the world trembles at the sound of that breath, let it. Because we are done. We are done. I said we are done whispering our existence. When we say liberation, we mean. Wow. When we say liberation, we mean. Brand new world premiere poem right here on the Cause Podcast. Always got something new for you. Keeping it fresh. Because we know some people are stale. In fact, some people are rotting. I better stop, though. I better ease off that. Better leave that alone. As my mother says, bless her heart. Shouting you out, mama. All right. If you have enjoyed any of this, please check out episode 24 of the Cause Podcast. Episode 24 is called The Women's Suffrage Movement. This entire episode, I'm about to sneak up on you. This entire episode is a sequel to an earlier episode. There is a through line here from the Women's Suffrage Movement episode of this podcast to this, the 30th episode, the Women's Liberation Movement. You gotta check it out. If you're also digging this, if you're feeling this, and I hope you are, you've also got to check out the specially curated women's liberation music soundtrack that I have curated for you. Come on now. You already know. And if you're really, really feeling this, you got to check out my book called Black Women's Liberation Music. I repeat, Black Women's Liberation Music, subtitle, Soul Sisters, Black Feminist Funksters, and Afro Disco Divas. So a lot of this, what I'm coming with today, is actually based on my book called Black Women's Liberation Movement Music. And while I'm at it, if you're feeling any of this, what I'm coming with, I want you to go to our website, the Center for African and African American Studies website, and check out our brand new beloved community program. This is something that you can join us. We are part of a movement right now that we are building a whole new intersectional and incredibly inclusive community. I don't really care what the rest of the country and the rest of the world are doing. Right here in Boulder, we are building the beloved community. Please join us. Check out the beloved community webpage on the Center for African and African American Studies website. And so as we wrap things up, I'm going to go ahead and hit you with the call to action. So the conclusion, the call to action, which I have subtitled Carrying the Flame. Let us be clear. The women's liberation movement is not a museum exhibit. It is a mandate. We are called to study this herstory deeply. Instead of history, yes, herstory. We want to center women and girls and femmes. I said it. So we are called to study this herstory deeply, called to teach it truthfully, called to critique it honestly, called to build on it boldly. That's all I'm trying to do with this podcast, humbly but boldly build on the contributions of the women's liberation movement and especially the Black women's liberation movement. We are called to ensure that feminism is anti-racist, anti-capitalist, anti-heterosexist, and anti-imperialist. That it centers queer and trans voices, that it honors care work, that it values community over competition. Y'all know how they like to get women and girls to compete against each other, what the patriarchs call catfight, pejoratively. They got all kinds of wicked words that they use, that they hurl at women and girls and femmes. And so this is for you, this podcast. This is my little love letter for women, for girls, for femmes. We are called to raise daughters and sons and children beyond binaries, to cultivate cultures of consent, compassion, and courage. We are called to remember that liberation is not given, it is generated. Not handed down, but hammered out. And so, as we close, let me invoke Angela Davis, who said freedom is a constant struggle. Constant, not seasonal, not symbolic, but constant. May we struggle wisely. May we struggle lovingly. May we struggle together. This has been The Cause. Conversations on music, history, and democracy. I'm your host, Reiland Rabaka. Until next time, keep the faith. And sisters, beloved sisters, keep the fire and keep building the beloved community. I end where I began, by saying peace and power, freedom and family. Join me in building the beloved community. Ho! Oh! We got another one. We got another one. Love letter for the sisters, for the mothers, for the grandmothers, for the aunties, for the daughters and granddaughters. Woo! Something special for you because you are so special. John! Yo, man, I feel like Stevie Wonder. Isn't she Isn't she lovely? Isn't she wonderful? Man, yeah. The women's liberation movement. Ooh, it's such an inspiration.
Thank you for joining us for the Cause Podcast with Dr. Reiland Rabaka. For your letters, questions, and suggestions regarding the podcast, email us, thecause@gmail.com. CAAAS. The Cause Podcast with Dr. Reiland Rabaka is produced and edited by John Arnold and is a production of the Center for African and African American Studies, The Cause, at the University of Colorado Boulder. For more information, visit us online at colorado.edu/center/cause. CAAAS.
Class is in session, so come and get your lesson. Ooh, the Cause Podcast. I love that. Do you love that?